Thank you everyone for joining us today. Welcome, my name is Kaisha Gabriel. I am the North America Field Marketing Manager for Kellton Tech, and our webinar today is going to be SoftwareAG Web Methods 10.3, Is It Right for You? I'm honored to have with me today two digital integration experts, Ram Kanamuri, Vice President of Digital Integration at Kellton Tech, and Anne-Marie Bond, Senior Manager of Product Marketing at SoftwareAG. Each of them will provide a unique perspective on the new Web Methods 10.3 upgrade. As an enterprise integration expert and thought leader, Ram will discuss the trending demands of API integration and will help you identify when and if this upgrade is right for you. While Anne-Marie will share her intimate knowledge of SoftwareAG Web Methods and how the new enhancements in version 10.3 will help you gain a competitive edge. Before we get started, I wanted to go over just a little bit of housekeeping. Should you have any questions during the presentation, please just type them into your chat box and we will address them at the end of the webinar. If we don't have time to respond to your questions live, we will respond to them via email. As a reminder, the session is being recorded and will be made available to you a day or two after the webinar. I'd like to start with a brief corporate overview about Kellton Tech. Kellton Tech has been at the forefront of digital transformation for the past 2 decades. We are a global company with operations in the United States, United Kingdom, Ireland, and Asia Pacific. Our clients range in size from nimble startups to Fortune 500 companies. Kellton Tech is a publicly traded company with over 1,500 employees. We are large enough to deliver with excellence, but we're still small enough to care. And now I'd like to turn over the presentation to Ram, who's going to talk a little bit about our digital integration expertise.
Thank you, Kaisha. Just before we get started for today's topic, I quickly would like to introduce digital integration capabilities of Kellton Tech. Most of the organizations and our customers that we serve do definitely go through some form of digital transformation, and we understand it's a journey, and Kellton Tech strategy and architecture services can help you define your digital goals and objectives and actually develop a future-proof digital strategy and roadmap and architecture. Of course, our pillars of strength have fundamentally been integration, process, analytics, and decisions, but also cloud enablement and data fabric architecture for data and cloud are also our core capabilities. Nowadays, analytics and decisions deal with a lot more of a digital noise being matched with your enterprise data and enterprise IP to deliver monetizable insights, but also process and PPM have evolved to leverage dynamic applications and RPA. That is where something that we can help as well. Fundamentally, cloud enablement is not just integration with SaaS, but also enabling our cloud application engineering is something that we do help with our customers. Quick agenda, what we'll learn today. We would start with discussing some trending demands on application integration and middleware architecture for focus of digital transformation and enterprise class digital transformation. We will dabble with some cloud deployment scenarios and why API and API-based architecture paradigms become important, what kind of strategy is evolving towards them, but also talk about IoT, how it's enabling new digital streams. We will have Anne-Marie talk about the new things that came about in SoftwareAG's 10.3 release. Very specifically API, cloud integration, and CUMULOCITY IoT. Later part, we will have a Q&A where we will discuss about how we strategize and upgrade to the latest and greatest of SoftwareAG middleware. Quickly going through the evolution of our enterprise integration. Most of you are familiar, in the 60s and 80s, going through TCP/IP, FTP kind of paradigms of moving data and files across. But over 80s and 90s and before Y2K, point-to-point interfacing and dabbling with spaghetti middleware architectures, maturing into message-oriented middleware and sometimes even into enterprise service bus. A lot of enterprises even dabble with BPM and process-oriented architecture as well, and matured into service-oriented architecture. There were many mixed results, mixed benefits, but they did meet their time. But nowadays, what we dabble with in digital transformation is something of a different nature, especially being able to build applications in the cloud or even middleware in the cloud in the form of an iPaaS or any new solution architecture like integration as a service, like API and cloud orchestration, like middleware as a microservice are the trends that we are dabbling with. But before we get there, the goals of most digital transformation objectives or goals from the business point of view, when they get translated into IT goals or IT objectives and capabilities, we need to rethink about how we classify our IT and how we manage their evolution is fundamentally different. Gone are the days where we have thought about managed packaged applications, COTS versus buy versus build. Fundamentally, what we have to think now about is the digital demand. And I don't want to take this session to talk about what are the trending digital demands for customer experience or business opportunities, but when that get translated into what a middleware or this digital middleware of the future needs to do for an agile IT of the future, that's what we would classify as defining a digital drift for the IT portfolio management. It fundamentally revolves around your core systems of differentiation of your enterprise. These could be some things that you could build on your own or employ on top of a platform. And these are the systems that revolve around your customer or around your product lifecycle or around your most innovative dashboards or business operational dashboards. Now, fundamentally, all of those systems or solutions need an agility of change. And that need for agility of change or the fast movement that they need to a level of innovation is the differentiation aspect. But a lot of enterprises very easily also recognize that middleware and a hybrid integration strategy is fundamental to achieve that agility or even bring in the capabilities of systems of insight and integration, especially data insight and surrounding big data as well. In those aspects, we fundamentally recognize that IT portfolio management is in two streams. One is to look towards growth opportunities where we can conceive new capabilities and systems that will bring new business value or business revenue for the streams. But the other side of it is to look at IT asset optimization, how more we can get out of the current investments or the future investments in a way that IT is still an enabler of that fast moving innovation. In this aspect, we have seen iPaaS proliferation for the last decade, but initial adoption of iPaaS used to be much more of a tactical strategy of achieving cloud integration, but that actually matured into much more of a hybrid integration need where enterprises have recognized that a lot of their center of gravity has moved already into cloud in the form of SaaS. And whatever is left as ERPs or legacy applications, those which are mid-office and back office will eventually find a home in the SaaS pattern. And that's where the differentiation of an enterprise is this hybrid business platform that enterprises need to conceive for themselves. And the capabilities of such a platform is not only from enabling big data integration or microservices architecture for cloud applications, but also creating an ecosystem of innovation where citizen integrators or ad hoc developers aligned with certain line of business and business innovation can be separated and dabble with only APIs or digital components that can be in a fast, innovative way reused or matured to meet the digital demands, while core IT and power users continue to build those microservices and packaged applications. It is about this agility and the need for systematic and structured and unstructured trends that we have to counter and actually prepare for the unknown is the API economy. And fundamentally, API economy is an enabler for turning a business and an organization into a platform. Every digital component or an asset that you would conceive in the future has to be looked upon as a product, and whether it is a data or an application functionality that is being re-engineered into microservices needs to look at it as a product and expose its product's capabilities and assets capabilities as an API. And that is what an API economy is. And monetization of those APIs can mean monetization externally, but also monetization internally, being allowed to create a culture within the IT which forms whether your bimodal IT needs or multi-speed IT needs that you can conceive for yourself. Good example of API economy is being able to create what we call the innovative apps. But fundamentally, innovative apps can only be differentiated across your different experiences of B2C, B2B, or B2E when your enterprise API strategy is thorough and complete. And some of our areas of prime forces, I would say, for systems reengineering in an enterprise API strategy usually surrounds those differentiating applications that are being engineered into microservices architecture, especially cloud-based microservices architecture, whether it's private cloud or public cloud. We will talk about it a little later. Right behind that primary driver of API, which is microservices of code differentiating applications, SaaS integration is the secondary driver of API strategy. As I said earlier, most enterprises will recognize that SaaS would be predominant or about 60 to 70, 80% in the future of your mid-office or back-office applications. And leveraging adoption of the SaaS, being able to have that agility to switch between your SaaS providers, throttling the usage and integration, rapid integration of those SaaS providers, and being able to mash up and synchronize the data and the insight across these systems in your own digital business platform is the focus of the API strategy as well. Of course, the old school legacy modernization or integration has also very quickly evolved into API-led connectivity, and API-led connectivity is also the area of normalizing APIs and their access and security as well. But not just that, API monetization, data as a service architecture that surrounds your data fabric initiatives or data lakes initiatives. All the UI UX development has also moved into API-based high-speed digital UI. And not only that, middleware now has also taken up responsibilities to containerize and dockerize middleware services as a Dockerized services as well. Now, these are the demands of what a middleware platform of this digital enterprise needs to dabble with, specifically with APIs. We will look into the rest of the webinar and presentation, especially from Anne-Marie, about how WEBMETHODS Integration Cloud and its integrated iPaaS, which provides API, B2B, SaaS integration, and cloud microservices digital business platform enablement as well in a single hybrid environment. But before we get there, we will look at what are those cloud trends that are going in the enterprises nowadays. Of course, 83% of the enterprise workload will be in the cloud. I was even much more conservative earlier. But also, we have seen 90% of the enterprises will start to use and leverage platforms, especially for even those distinguishing areas as a middleware and even aspects of customer experience. We have seen platforms being leveraged for delivering innovative functionality. But beyond data and functionality of applications that distinguishes the business, the physical deployment of these applications is also a big question when we are dabbling with cloud strategies. Of course, we have already moved a lot of our infrastructure into cloud in the form of virtualization, whether it's managed in our private environments or in a public cloud like AWS or in Azure. But most enterprises have already moved into these public clouds of AWS and Azure and others into a mode of private cloud capabilities within that as well. That means, infrastructure will be carved out with VPNs established with multiple cloud subscriptions from these providers. In an aspect where we are talked about earlier, where enterprises are looking to distinguish certain domains like middleware, that's when the hybrid cloud environments are relevant. Middleware in the cloud and hybrid cloud middleware environments are the ones that will bridge your multi-cloud strategy as well. When enterprises adopt multiple cloud providers, specifically sometimes customers have preference for data being in AWS while applications being in Azure. A hybrid cloud middleware architecture is the one that will enable such a multi-cloud adoption. But before that multi-cloud strategy, we have to understand what those bubbles mean when it actually comes to IT itself. Of course, packaged software and developing software on our own are some things that are fundamental when we need to create systems that we can't buy, and we need to create systems that are distinguishing, although they might be microservices in the cloud. Of course, we will, on the other hand, have SaaS like Salesforce, Kronos, Workday. Most of our shared services of enterprises will be SaaS platforms that we will adopt. Those are fundamental systems or core systems that will contain data and insight that needs to be merged into an enterprise digital platform. On the middle, the infrastructure as a service is already a solved problem. We have already dabbled with middleware, but now we are already dabbling with containerization of our infrastructure in these cloud platforms as well. Now, what does a platform mean for middleware is being able to leverage a lot of the capabilities and still be available in that hybrid cloud nature is the answer for the future middleware in the cloud. And with that, we will talk about this hybrid cloud from SoftwareAG in detail a little bit later. But at a high level, I would say the WEBMETHODS cloud deployment option, the hybrid cloud is much more convenient for those customers who have already invested into on-prem WEBMETHODS integration. Their investments are readily available to be lifted and shifted into the cloud deployment as well, or vice versa as well. But the hybrid cloud enables a lot more capabilities of maturity in many areas of your integration, not just the core connectivity, but about APIs that we talked about, but also into the Internet of Things and other innovations that we will see in the future. Next topic in this architectural review is to talk about how Internet of Things is also becoming a trending driver for middleware to prepare for itself in its capabilities to provision for end-to-end solutioning in an IoT. Most enterprises actually, even Forrester talks about 17 or 18 different use cases that most enterprises can seek use cases within their businesses. But within those 17, we think they fall under these three heavy categories. The design category is where you leverage IoT to not just improve customer user experience, but also enable new business models or revenue streams themselves, or even enable new service models within your product streams or service streams, and enable new revenue for the business. In the middle tier, it's maybe not about so much about generating new revenue streams, but much more about optimizing the processes, the business production, or even inventory management, but a lot more about being able to track and trace for fleet management, or even asset management and their utilization management. Sometimes predictive maintenance and industrial IoT aspects of being able to collect heavy sets of MSS data and operate upon that is also IoT use cases that fall under operate. The consume side of the use cases is where enterprises might not really dabble in the edge generation of the IoT data, but they can subscribe or purchase or subscribe into IoT data from third parties and leverage that into their own insight that will drive not only real-time locational or insight, but also things like weather and climate conditions to influence their business processes or outcomes. IoT is not just for connected car or connected fleets, but also we have seen IoT employed in smart cities or connected elevators. But IoT is not only for predictive maintenance, where it can be employed in heavy machinery and complex appliances, but also IoT can be used as a mechanism to stimulate extensive, what we call digital growth of future digital enterprises in the form of a digital twin architecture as well. So some of aspects from SoftwareAG, especially the Alphabet in cloud, has a digital twin capabilities to simulate these extensive, large number of IoT things of the future and simulate such business scenarios even before realizing them into real-world solutions. But in short, IoT there is no commercial off-the-shelf end-to-end IoT business solution that an enterprise can buy for itself. Most enterprises will realize there is a distinction in every enterprise, even within their own domain. The way they conceive is always you have to assemble and build an end-to-end IoT solution. Yes, you will work with IoT endpoints, but you will leverage a platform for edge platform connectivity and gateway connectivity, but you'll also leverage being able to manage those solutions with a platform rather than build everything on your own. Also, these platforms need to be able to connect with your enterprise applications so that your real-time insight is actually being matched with your enterprise IT in being able to conceive that automation end-to-end. In a typical curve of discovering IoT use cases within an enterprise, most analysts, business analysts, or most architects need to look for these 4 typical steps. You need to look for those areas of being able to sense of various business states within that object or process. What are the areas of sensory aspects that you can improve or recognize? That is, once the sensory aspect has been identified, what kind of a visibility or a reporting aspect that the business is leveraging over a period of time with the sensory data is the next thing that you would look for. With that sensory data and a reporting accumulated data, what action is that you can take is the area that you would look for to improve and correct. With the action identified, how do you automate that action in addition is to be identified as well. Once these are the fundamental building blocks of a business analysis of identifying an IoT-based use case, it is very easy to realize an end-to-end solution. And again, as I said, a lot of the innovation that's coming out from SoftwareAG WEBMETHODS 10.3 and its capabilities from device management, from being able to conceive and ideate with a lot of the capabilities available, it is very quickly realizable solutions nowadays for IoT as well. At this time, I would like to invite Anne-Marie to talk about the new released 10.3 and its some of its major innovations, especially in API, cloud, and IoT. Anne-Marie?
Thanks, Ram. Thanks for that really enlightening view of the market today. Today I want to tell you just what the latest and greatest is in WebMethods 10.3. 10.3 is a major release for SoftwareAG, and I'm just going to touch on some of the highlights, but I encourage you to go out and watch some of the webinars that are out there to get more details if your interest is piqued, or if there's something that you don't see in here that you wanted to find out more about. And of course, you can always talk to me individually. So Ram talked a little bit about disruption and a lot of, great sort of market and industry drivers towards API-led integration. And this is at the forefront of many disruptive businesses. In fact, it spawned a new term, the API economy, which is what's generating all of these new innovative applications. And this API economy is what businesses are using to create new business channels and new business models, and it's driving these new extensible platforms. API management has really come into its own this year, and the same thing is happening with our own API platform. This year, we are pleased to be able to say that we have leadership rankings in both the Gartner Magic Quadrant and in the most recent Forrester Wave. And our platform, I think one of the reasons is that we look at APIs in a really comprehensive way, right? We look at the entire API lifecycle. And you can see that when you just look at the 4 core components that make up our API platform. They're tightly integrated, but they're loosely coupled. So each one functions individually very well, but it's designed for easy integration into a seamless platform. The API portal is where API consumers and providers interact. We call it the API marketplace, and this is where API builders provide information about API specs, protocols, limitations, and capabilities. It's also where our users or consumers will find APIs they're interested in and register to use them, and then they provide feedback. And that creates sort of a cycle of improvement and value around your APIs. The gateway is really the core of the API offering when it comes to protecting and managing the consumption of APIs. From extensive security policies to being able to throttle and control traffic to monitoring and tracking usage, the gateway really handles all of the runtime aspects of your APIs. These are the 2 primary components, and in some cases, these are the only 2 pieces you'll see implemented, but we provide 2 differentiating components. The API catalog, which you probably know as CentralSite, offers much broader governance and lifecycle management capabilities than our gateway. Especially important is CentralSite's ability to track dependencies across assets. And what this means is if you change an API, you could potentially be breaking several other APIs without even knowing it. And Centrosite protects you from these kinds of mistakes. It's much deeper and more capable than what our competitors offer. And in organizations that value process and governance, such as government organizations, for example, it can be a real differentiator. API consumption is something you won't really hear about from other vendors. This component provides the ability to manage not the consumption of APIs that you're offering, but the APIs that you're using from other SaaS products. Consider, for example, if you're using Google Maps in one of your web products, or you're using a Marketo API. This can be expensive. How do you keep from building up a 5-figure bill over the course of a month when you have no way of tracking the usage? So we provide a way of tracking the consumption as well as your provider metrics. So let's talk about what's new in the API portal. In the API portal, in this most recent release, for this standalone developer portal, we have really enhanced the customization capabilities. And the reason is this is where a company is presenting itself. This is where you want to have your corporate branding. This is where you really want to reflect your own cultural statement and marketing statement when you're providing your APIs to the world. We have 4 layouts, we have new sample themes, and of course, another story across the API Gateway and the API Portal is our support for Open API 3.0, which is the OAS spec, the new Swagger spec, which allows us to publish and consume OAS APIs. Just as we always do at WebMethods, we focus on being an agnostic, independent vendor and supporting as many specifications as we can. We see some of our competitors focusing on one spec or another. We support Swagger, we support RAML, we support REST, we support Flow. We try and make sure that we are focusing on supporting everything that our customers might want to support. Okay, let's talk about what's new in the gateway. Okay, so the gateway has sort of the job of managing all of the policies as APIs are invoked. And what you see here on the page is the highly visual and easy to understand policy page where you specify your threat protection, transport, accessibility, request processing, routing, everything to do with controlling how your APIs are accessed. It's very easy, drag and drop, citizen developer friendly. And of course, because it sits on top of integration server, you can always dive deep and do something really custom if you need to. So what we've done in the most recent release is around some security enhancements, simplifying our configuration capabilities for things like OID and OAuth, much easier configuration, providing data masking policies, support for Open API spec, of course, not just the descriptor, but also all the new features like links, callbacks for asynchronous APIs, which enables us to handle asynchronous APIs. And it's also a potential conversion tool for customers that were previously using RAML. We've added a capability to do API mashups. You can see in the picture, there's a tab for mashups now, and this chains together 2 or 3 APIs to create a single API call, or a composition where multiple APIs are called in parallel. Later, we'll be having composite APIs as well. We do support asynchronous APIs now, hot deployment, and runtime registries. In the API catalog, this is where you can discover services and APIs, manage and govern your API provider workflow. What we're looking at here is the very sophisticated view that you get when you're examining the impact of making a change to an API. You see everything from other API dependencies to services to organizations that are using it to data that it relies on. And what we're doing with this API catalog is we're transitioning transitioning it to a much more business user-friendly UI. So in the most recent release, we've transitioned some of the governance capabilities. That's going to continue so that soon you will see all of these capabilities in a much more sort of non-technical user UI that's based on the web. The latest member of our API family is something we call the MICROGATEWAY. And before I talk to you about the features, I want to talk a little bit about the purposes of microgateways. Main gateways, or edge gateways, which is what our main API gateway is, primarily serves north-south traffic. So when a consumer comes in from outside the company and is querying some piece of data or some service, then we want to use the main gateway to manage and control that. So they protect and mediate that. They're able to track, the consumption metrics and build value over time. The microgateway is more for supporting distributed microservices architectures. Behind the scenes, a lot of microservices are interacting with each other in what we call east-west traffic, right? They're not being called directly from outside the company, but they're talking to each other to build up a solution or response to a more large-grained capability. But if they have to go back out and come back through the main gateway, they can overload the network. They can create a sort of a DevOps issue of having to constantly do updates to the main gateway for policies that are inside the firewall policies. And every time you do a change, you have to get it approved. So microgateways have emerged as a solution for doing policies that just apply to a single microservices. So that might be just a couple things that you want to do. You want to create a SAML token, and you want to limit the microservice availability to 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and that's it. And those policies only apply to that microservice. And the way you can deploy that is you can deploy them in a sidecar mode, which is a simple Java service that's deployed in the same Docker container as your microservice. And that makes it easy to manage sort of the microservices scalability, because you can easily deploy additional Docker containers that are already provisioned with the microservice and with the policies that protect it using this new microgateway. Now, some of the advantages of this microgateway include its very small footprint. It's less than 10 meg. Its ability to be deployed in multiple form factors. You can deploy it as a standalone Docker container, or you can deploy it as just a simple Java runtime. And you can very easily provision and scale it across your microservices architecture by deploying it in standalone or sidecar mode. All right, the next big topic that I want to talk about from the October release is what's happening with our hybrid API and integration cloud. Now, we've had a lot of exciting news about the cloud this year, and in fact, I think for SoftwareAG, this is the year of the cloud. And it's been a long time coming, right? For several years, we've seen a big push to the cloud. We've seen initially the CIO mandates to move the hardware to the cloud, and that was the first thing that happened. Let's move our IT resources to the cloud. But that didn't address kind of the challenges of having to maintain those monolithic architectures in the cloud and understand how to use cloud capabilities like Docker and Kubernetes. And then we saw the mandates to add capacity in the cloud. So to be able to scale with the demand for regional bursting, or to scale with the demand for seasonal bursting. And then we saw that overall, the need to accelerate our delivery of new solutions and new business capabilities is really pervasive. And so we're seeing these agile microservices architectures and APIs and the requirement for data at the edge. And it all drives this requirement for being able to very quickly and easily deploy our solutions in the cloud. So for a couple of years now, we've had a hybrid cloud solution. And our integration cloud solution and our integration server form the core of that hybrid cloud solution. The WEBMETHODS Integration Cloud is hosted on AWS by SoftwareAG. It's managed and operated by SoftwareAG. And we also have a hybrid connectivity to WEBMETHODS integration on premises, which would be managed by the customer. But the fully managed integration as a service is really critical for gaining the advantages of the cloud without adding the extra work of managing Docker containers with complicated Kubernetes systems. And I want to point out also that our cloud, even though it says here it's hosted on AWS, it's actually a multi-cloud implementation. It's supported on 2 platforms today, on AWS and Azure, and by the end of the month, it will also be supported on Alibaba. Now, the newest offering in our portfolio is something that we call cloud deployment. And don't confuse this lift and shift cloud deployment with what we were talking about a year ago when we were talking about lift and shift as the ability to Dockerize your integration server and move it to the cloud and then manage those Docker containers yourself. This actually is something completely different. What it is we are allowing you to take your services that you've already developed on premise, open up your designer, link to your integration server, and looking at those services and packages, say, I want to deploy these to Integration Cloud. I'm going to configure my Integration Cloud tenant. I'm going to choose the model or the pattern that I want to deploy in, and then I'm going to just push those services and packages straight to the cloud. If you can just go back one slide, Ram. I think we might have skipped one by accident there. Thank you. So let me talk a little bit more about the differences between the hybrid integration solution and the cloud deployment solution. I want to make sure that everybody is clear because both of them provide value, but you're going to use them in different circumstances. In the hybrid integration solution, WEBMETHODS Integration Cloud uses container technology, including Docker, to simplify the deployment of your hybrid solutions. And it lets you create new applications and solutions in the cloud using a low-code, simplified user interface, which connects seamlessly to existing applications and solutions on-premise. So you'll use a development tool, which is browser-based, which looks a lot like Blockly UI. It's a very simplified drag and drop kind of development experience. We have 150 recipes, pre-built recipes, integrating things like Salesforce and Marketo, or SAP and other products, so that you can just drag and drop these recipes into your design tool, and automatically all you have to do is create, is specify the connectivity information. It integrates securely with on-premise apps using reverse invoke server, and it allows you to expose services from an intelligent routing layer. So what that means is, behind the scenes, you've got these dev stages, dev, test, QA, and live stages predefined. And when you create a service and you want to promote it to the next stage, you just drag and drop it from one stage to the next. But on the consumer side, when consumers come in to maybe use a service that's already live, there's no clustering. Instead, they're going to be routed intelligently to the service that is available in the live stage. And all of this is managed and monitored using our web-based cloud management and monitoring tooling. Lift and shift cloud deployment is designed for really professional developers. And these are people who are comfortable and, in fact, prefer to use something like an Eclipse-based designer because they already know how to use it. They know how to tie in their own custom Java services. They know how to use the more fancy or debugging tooling. Maybe they're already pre-integrated with third-party tools that they're using for DevOps, like Maven or Jenkins. And all they want to do is, instead of asking IT to stand up another IS server on premise, they want to deploy it to the cloud so they can take advantage of an already managed SaaS application. The way they can do that is they just develop their integrations, APIs, and business logic in Designer, or they can point to existing integrations and APIs, and then they configure a link to a tenant on Integration Cloud. And they select from a predefined landscape, which is automatically provisioned with the packages, APIs, and logic. They can determine the number and type of integration servers they want. So you can have maybe 4 integration servers when you're in production and they're clustered, but you may only have 1 integration server in the dev stage. And again, you can just drag and drop your services and packages from one stage to another. And behind the scenes, SoftwareAG is taking care of applying fixes, doing upgrades, and handling all of the management and support for those implementations. You can monitor the deployed landscape infrastructure and flows with built-in KPI-based dashboards that are using Prometheus behind the scenes. There's a REST API, so you can get those Prometheus metrics for yourself. And you can be alerted when your system health is suboptimal, and you get to determine what that means based on the specific metrics you provide. So that is a very kind of a deep dive technical description of some of the new capabilities. I welcome your questions and comments at the end of the chat, and I'd like to hand it over to Ram to talk about IoT.
Thanks, Marianne. And that's the pick for the innovations on the SoftwareAG 10.3. Of course, I talked about it a little bit earlier on how CUMULOCITY is now a comprehensive platform that can accelerate enterprise IoT adoption. First and foremost, it is cloud-based and ready to go. So you can, even in the lowest form where you have conceived a IoT solution or a use case for your enterprise, which might involve just a Raspberry Pi and a mobile phone, you can immediately realize that solution even at a POC level and deploy it as well. Of course, CUMULOCITY has been available for working on trial basis for anybody who can subscribe to it, so you can feel it as well. Of course, another big aspect of CUMULOCITY is it is independent and open. It supports all communication platforms when it comes to Internet of Things and device management as well. But it is also open and extendable, especially if you take the Enterprise Framework Edition, you can completely customize it. It is open source as well. Not in the open source, free open source, but it's open code, and is fully rebrandable as well. It has a lot of built-in solution accelerators that can bring in many ideations for analytics and solution accelerators. Fundamentally, as I said, CUMULOCITY from 2 years ago to now is a fully integrated component of your digital business platform. That means all the data, all the integration, all the connectivity that you leverage from this edge IoT platform is available for your integration platform as well. But vice versa too. CUMULOCITY leverages the capabilities of the digital business platform, especially those areas of APAMA and real-time analytics, and the recently acquired Gementis AI kind of capabilities are also extended for the CUMULOCITY platform with this integration. Coming to the core platform capabilities, of course, at the core, any IoT platform, the strengths are at its device connectivity options that are available for CUMULOCITY. CUMULOCITY is not just IoT network agnostic. It actually connects devices via different network types, ranging from fixed Wi-Fi networks to mobile networks, including VPN, or even Modbus, CAN bus, Profinet, and 300 plus other industrial protocols are well supported with pre-integrated gateways That's what device management and device connectivity capabilities and edge services capabilities are there from Cumulocity device management perspective. But not only that, devices are key capabilities in the first layer, which you have a fast model-less device integration. But being able to manage that edge device firmware and software and their updates remotely is the unique capability that Cumulocity brings to the platform. It's very unique in its market. But also analytics and decisions. Second, going back. All the analytics and decisions from edge analytics to the streaming analytics, everything is available for very quick, smart rules, smart decisioning, and sometimes even visual analytics for visualization at operational dashboards is also possible right now with Cumulocity features. Integration, as I said, since Cumulocity and Apama are in the cloud available, they're readily integrated with the integration cloud as well. So that extension allows you to integrate IoT data or sensory data alongside with your accumulated big data for analytics and algorithms as well. So that kind of an engineering of end-to-end solutions are possible with big data integration and cloud integration capabilities enabled in Cumulocity nowadays. Beyond that, application development and sometimes even case management for sensory data. Maybe one customer was dabbling with opening a door, which is controlled again by sensory and IoT, based on real-time case management, where it's actually for application where doors are managed for traffic flow as well. So those are areas where application development as well and dashboarding is also possible to conceive case management kind of applications in Cumulocity platform. Of course, industrial IoT and track and trace are fundamental applications of Cumulocity. Already existing customer base and large implementations of Cumulocity, especially the recent alliance with Adamos of Europe, where all heavy machinery manufacturers have formed an alliance. They actually leverage a lot of the industrial IoT capabilities of the Cumulocity platform and use that as a agnostic forum to develop that expertise in that industry. Again, Cumulocity, from automation to vehicle monitoring, track and trace to machinery, it can connect to anything. It can, of course, leverage all the MQTT RESTful messages and send data that can be accessible and consumed by applications or for tech support, for help desk, for customer experience, or even executive dashboards that we might want to leverage solutions for. Of course, not only that, the integration with legacy data or enterprise data, including SaaS integration and API integration, is fundamental to the new capabilities of Cumulocity platform. Cumulocity platform, when you are looking to adopt, as I said earlier, there's a fast, quick entry for self-service out-of-box predefined accelerators on the cloud platform available that you can subscribe immediately right now. At the next fan-out level, when you have a departmental need, that means you will need somebody has to mute themselves. Thank you. The fan-out departmental need, you would have another level of option to subscribe to Cumulocity, where you can create multiple IoT use cases for your departmental needs within the enterprise as well. Beyond that, when you have a need for IoT framework level scale out, that means you are creating your own SaaS platforms to your customers that will dabble in IoT and real-time analytics. A full scale out version of enterprise Cumulocity is a recommended path. At this time, I just probably would want to, in the interest of time, look out for question and answer phase. But before the question and answer phase, I'd like to talk about the last innovations, a few more that we have no time right now to dig deeper, but the few that need a worth of a mention is definitely machine learning with the new acquisition from Gementis, which is a very small, lightweight Java-based engine that can be deployed on IS or any JBoss or any Java-based engine. It can be deployed on the edge or very near to your data or big data. It can listen to any kind of PMML programming from your data scientists and be leveraged for runtime deployment very easily. On the other hand, your old school web methods BPMS has matured to a level where agile apps and dynamic apps is the new capability, where now your BPMS models can actually at runtime leverage or interject new steps or new rules, or even dynamic case management applications can be conceived with the new mature platforms as well. Of course, Cryon acquisition and actually partnership and bringing in RPA capabilities alongside with agile apps into the dynamic apps has allowed for integrating BPMS and RPA together for many successful use cases as well. So how do you move there from where you are to the new 10.3? Of course, some of you are familiar with the end of cycle or end of maintenance. We need to definitely have a agenda to go in and look at our infrastructure modernization, especially the cloud enablement. What are the options to move to cloud and give away the management of at least the infrastructure and the platform? We need to concentrate only on what differentiates our enterprise, and integrations or APIs or leveraging the newer features and capabilities is the assessment or a strategy that needs to be applied when we stand to migrate to the next version of 10.3. Alongside with that modernization, of course, improving the SDLC. Whether we are fully capable and ready for DevOps end-to-end or have that multi-speed CI/CD, those are the SDLC improvements that need to be also incorporated into modernizing the environments. Not only strategy and methodology, the analysis and planning is also important for achieving that futuristic roadmap. And adopting the right technology, the right deployment architecture, with the right software architecture in microservices, APIs, and gateways. But definitely putting down a maturity roadmap where you might not be able to achieve everything overnight. We need to take steady steps, not only in realizing the technology, but also enabling the people, especially the IT teams, converting them into the new paradigms, training them, and following their maturity curve alongside with the implementation and technology realization is very important. Kellton Tech brings in a lot of expertise, not only utilities and other frameworks, but proven methodologies that actually allow for realizing those outcomes that you would have. Quick checklist on what you should consider, especially for an upcoming upgrade to 10.3 is not only, if you're nearing your end of cycle or end of maintenance, look at what is those latest features that might actually bring in that more value to your business and the ecosystem, especially the API and micro gateways, especially hybrid cloud deployment scenarios. Definitely the new trending IoT and AI RPA features will also need to be leveraged. So those are your answers to why you should move to 10.3 as soon as possible. With this, I would open it up for questions. Kaisha, back to you.
Hi, Ram. Thank you so much. We have a question. How can we access the API catalog?
So the API catalog is also known as CentralSite. I guess I'm not sure what is meant by access. There are a lot of controls that you could set on the catalog in order to govern who has visibility to which APIs at which time, and what the requirements are for the APIs that are being built.
Maybe also to add to what Anne-Marie has said, yes, it does have its own UI where you will be able to integrate with your, of course it is integrated with the portal. So there can be an option where an API is sitting in your catalog and can be pushed to the portal for publication to the community per se. Again, there is no set rule that an API has to originate in a catalog or in a portal or at a gateway. Sometimes it will come from a third party in the case of SaaS integration. So that's what the platform components will allow, is there are multiple tools available in whichever way you look at the same API. While an API is in the portal, it is being leveraged by the community in the form of a developer posting it there or a consumer looking for consuming it. But a catalog will allow you to govern that same API that is on the portal in its life cycle, whether it's still in that test phase or it is in already a runtime and governing the runtime policies, or even deploying at the runtime deployment aspect. Also, catalog gets involved in automating deployment as well. It would have, yes, its own UI from the aspect of governance and administration and maintenance, while the community of API developers and consumers would be concentrating on the portal. They will have an aspects of interacting with the catalog when especially the producers of the APIs, when they participate in the lifecycle and its governance aspects. Hope that answered the question.
Okay, thank you so much. We had another question came in. I think we have time for just one more. Do you support asynchronous APIs? Sorry, asynchronous APIs.
Yes, thanks, Kaisha. We do support asynchronous APIs in this release. We support the full Open API spec, which is the latest version of the Swagger standard. And that includes event enabling using protocol bridging. So this makes REST APIs responsive to events with JMS and AMQP support.
Great. And then one more we had, is API portal or gateway a part of the 10.3 bundle, or do you pay for it separately for those licenses?
You can either purchase it as a standalone product, or you can purchase it as part of an API management bundle. And both the portal and the gateway are available on premises and in the cloud. So you can choose, you can mix and match. You might have your portal in the cloud and your gateway on premises for security or governance reasons. But yes, we offer all those options.
Okay, great. All right. Well, I think those are that's all the time that we have for questions right now. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us, and thank you, Anne-Marie and Ram, for this session. I think it was very informative. And for those questions that we did not have a chance to get to today, please let me assure you we will follow up individually via email. And as a reminder, just to let you guys know, we did record the webinar and we'll be sending it out in the next few days, as well as provide access to the slide deck. So thank you again. You guys have been a fantastic audience, and please reach out to us if you have any questions, and we'll be happy to get back with you. Have a great day.